The cafeteria aboard the Galactic Exchange Institute smelled like warm algae and ozone. Fluorescent vines pulsed gently overhead, casting a soft teal light across the tables, which bent slightly to accommodate the various shapes of their occupants. It was third cycle lunch, and the tables were packed with students from across the galaxy, each eating something that would have killed someone else at the table. At the far end, near the ventilation fans, sat Ferris Adler. He was hunched over a tray carrying a modest pile of rice, beans, and what looked like sliced red wax. To any human, it was a humble lunch with a reckless centerpiece. Ghost peppers. Not the genetically altered kind. Not the lab-sterilized version. Real, ground-grown but Jalokia, air freighted from Earth with a warning label on the box. Across from him sat a large, beetle-skinned student named Halleck, whose eyes blinked vertically. Halleck studied Ferris's plate as if it were a live explosive. "Ferris," Halleck said, his voice a murmur like shifting gravel. "What is that weapon on your plate?" "Ghost peppers," Ferris said, picking one up casually. "They're spicy. Real spicy." "You probably wouldn't like them." Halleck drew back slightly. "Your species consumes incendiary organics recreationally?" "Spicy food, yeah. It's a thing," Ferris said, chewing slowly. His face remained neutral, though his ears flushed red almost immediately. A drop of sweat formed under his eye. From the bench adjacent to them, a smaller, amphibious student named Piv leaned in. "You are in visible distress. Are you undergoing punishment?" "No, I like it," Ferris said, reaching for his water. "It's kind of the point. That burn, that heat, it's good." Halleck turned to Piv. "We must report this. He is harming himself to meet a cultural expectation. This may be a ritual." "It's not a ritual," Ferris said. "It's lunch." Piv's gills flared slightly. "You are sweating from your eyelids. That's normal. It means it's working. You are physiologically reacting as though under attack." Ferris nodded. "Yup." Halleck stood, towering over the table. "This is unthinkable torture." The room quieted. Conversations dropped off as more students turned toward the commotion. A scaled student with stalked eyes whispered something to a friend. Half the cafeteria was now staring at Ferris, who was wiping sweat from his brow and reaching for another pepper. "You're making this weird," Ferris said. A security drone floated down from the ceiling, its lens focusing on him. A soft chime sounded. "Student Ferris Adler. Are you experiencing duress?" Ferris groaned. "No. I'm fine. I'm eating hot peppers. Please confirm this is a voluntary activity." "Confirmed." The drone hovered silently for a moment, then floated away. Halleck sat down slowly, looking shaken. This must be documented. Your people are capable of enduring internal combustion for pleasure. This changes everything. I'm not combusting. Not yet. The next day, Ferris found himself surrounded by a small crowd during lunch. A few curious students had gathered with notepads and translation devices. Someone had even brought a thermal sensor which beeped every time Ferris took a bite. "Are you trying to break a record?" asked Dren, a soft-voiced student from the Andari cluster with translucent skin. "No. Just hungry." Piv leaned in. "Your blood pressure is elevated. Your eyes are leaking again." Ferris chuckled. "That's just capsaicin. It tricks the body into thinking it's in danger. But it's not. That is deception. You willingly ingest a substance that deceives your nervous system." Halleck asked, astonished. "Pretty much. You are either incredibly resilient or catastrophically reckless. Some people say both." By the following week, Ferris had become an unwilling celebrity. The Institute's Intercultural Behavior Board summoned him for an interview. The room was clinical and silent, lit by a panel of pale blue lights. 3 alien faculty members sat across from him. One of them was Halleck, now wearing a formal sash. "We wish to understand your species' tolerance for self-inflicted pain," said the chairperson, a gelatinous entity named Valu. "I'm not inflicting pain," Ferris said. "I'm eating food. Your internal sensors during lunch yesterday showed a spike in cortisol, pupil dilation, and a temporary rise in body temperature. These are symptoms of acute stress." "Yeah, but it's controlled. I choose it. That's kind of the point." Vala rippled slowly. "Why?" "It's hard to explain. It's about pushing limits. Some people run ultramarathons. Some do cold plunges. We like testing ourselves. Halleck folded his arms. Your species romanticizes suffering. No. We reframe it. There's a difference. The board was silent for a moment. Then Vala asked, would you be willing to participate in a controlled demonstration? Ferris hesitated. What kind of demonstration? We would like to observe your reaction in a medical setting. Under supervision. Ferris sighed. As long as I get to choose the peppers. 2 days later, Ferris lay on a padded recliner in the xenomedical wing, surrounded by monitors. A trio of researchers stood nearby. Cameras recorded every angle. A sealed container held 3 peppers, 1 ghost, 1 Carolina Reaper, and 1 Naga Viper. Ferris picked up the Reaper. This one's the hottest, he said. I don't recommend trying this at home. Halleck stood by the door, arms crossed. We have no homes where this is tried. Ferris bit into the pepper. For 10 seconds, nothing happened. Then his face turned crimson. Sweat beaded on his forehead. His mouth opened slightly as he sucked in air. A nurse approached. Are you in pain? Yes. Do you want to stop? No, why not? Because it'll pass. The nurse stepped back. Remarkable. Ferris held up one hand, signaling for a moment. He focused on his breathing. 15 minutes later, he was lying back, sipping milk. His voice was hoarse. That was rough. Valu approached. You have demonstrated significant tolerance for chemical irritation. This may have applications in hostile environment training. Ferris looked up. You want to feed soldiers hot peppers? Not exactly. But your neurology may offer insights into coping mechanisms. Halleck moved closer. You are not unbreakable. But you are. Unnervingly willing. Thanks, I guess. Your body reacts with the same panic signals as ours would. But you override them. Yeah. It's called resilience. Or delusion, Halleck muttered. Ferris raised an eyebrow. Maybe both. In the following weeks, the Institute approved a new elective, Human Sensory Thresholds and Psychological Endurance. Ferris was listed as a guest speaker. He showed up wearing a loose hoodie and carrying a bag of dried peppers. The class was packed. No, I'm not a masochist, he told them. I just like pushing through the burn. It's not about pain. It's about what's behind it. Piv raised a fin. Would you do this if no one were watching? Yeah. I was doing it alone before you found me. Halleck was seated in the back. He looked down at his tablet, then back up. Then your species voluntarily simulates suffering as a form of recreation. That is not just endurance. It is cognitive anomaly. Ferris laughed. Maybe. But it's our anomaly. At the end of the semester, the class held a final demonstration. Ferris brought 3 sauces of increasing heat. Each student was given a small dab under supervision. Halleck refused to participate. This is madness, he said. Ferris dipped a chip into the hottest bottle and ate it calmly. His face flushed, but he smiled through the pain. Welcome to Earth flavor, he said. Later that night, Halleck knocked on Ferris's dorm room. He stood at the door holding a small container. I acquired this from your shipment, he said. It is labeled Scorpion Chili. I wish to understand. Ferris stared. You sure? No, but I am willing. Ferris opened the container. Okay, just a sliver. And have milk ready. They both sat at the table. Halleck took the tiniest piece. His pupils dilated instantly. His body tensed. Is this normal? Yup. Halleck's hands trembled. Why do you do this? Ferris shrugged. Because it makes me feel alive. Halleck sat in silence for several minutes, sipping milk, his face twitching. Finally, he said, Your species is terrifying. Ferris grinned. Only during lunch. 3 days after the Scorpion Chili incident, Ferris was summoned to Lab Bay 4. He arrived late, wearing a hoodie with a faded Earth Band logo and socks that didn't match, still chewing a piece of gum that tasted like synthetic mint. The hallway leading to the lab smelled faintly of sterilized moss and some kind of citrus derivative that had become the Institute's new standard for clean but alien neutral. He stepped in and paused. 6 alien students stood on one side of the room, all wearing protective eyewear and lab-issued gloves. On the other side, a single padded chair, a tray with various sealed vials, and a large screen displaying his biometric profile in real time. Okay, Ferris said, biting his thumbnail. This looks ominous. We've calibrated the environment to match your home planet's standard sea level pressure, said Dr. Velen, a narrow-limbed researcher with skin that shimmered like oil on water. Sit, please. I haven't agreed to anything yet. You agreed to participate in cross-sensory studies, Velen replied, tapping a console. This falls under that protocol. Today is a comparison between your response to capsaicin and other terrestrial compounds classified as irritating but non-harmful. Sounds like a party, Ferris muttered, dropping into the chair. A student with a cluster of eyes twitching independently stepped forward. We begin with allyl isothiocyanate. Your species extracts it from horseradish and mustard seeds. Yeah, that stuff clears your sinuses right out. Exactly. We are curious whether the neural pathways activated by capsaicin overlap with those stimulated by this compound. Ferris leaned back and reached for the small wafer on the tray labeled Sample A. It smelled faintly of vinegar and something sharp. He popped it into his mouth and chewed. Within seconds, his nose began to run. His eyes watered. He blinked rapidly, reaching for the tissue dispenser. Oh yeah, he said, voice nasally. That's the good stuff. Dr. Velen tapped a note into the console. Dilated vascular response detected. Lacrimal glands active. No visible signs of distress. I feel like I just snorted fire through my face, but it's fine. You described the sensation in terms of combustion again. Yeah, that's kind of our go-to metaphor. Student Hizshek, who had a translucent dome of a head filled with circulating fluid, leaned in. Is there a biological advantage to this? Not really, Ferris said, blowing his nose. It's just intense. It makes you feel like something's happening. In a good way. This is baffling, murmured Jor, a crystalline being whose voice sounded like whined through gravel. Your species seeks out intensity for its own sake. Pretty much. Dr. Velen brought up the next compound. We'll proceed with piperine, now found in black pepper. Lower Scoville rating, but it targets similar receptors. Ferris rolled his shoulders and nodded. Let's do it. The test continued for another 40 minutes. Each sample hit different, some stung, some burned, one made his ears feel weirdly cold, but none of them rattled him. He answered every question, described every sensation, and only winced twice. When the session ended, the students filed out slowly, whispering in low tones. Hizshek lingered. You reacted predictably to each compound but expressed satisfaction during discomfort. That is inconsistent with our models of intelligent behavior. You ever listen to Earth music? Ferris asked, pulling his hoodie over his head. No, some of it's sad on purpose. We like feeling things even if they're hard. Hizshek tilted his head. You voluntarily consume distress orally and orally. That's one way of putting it. Ferris yawned and rubbed his eyes. I'm gonna go nap until dinner. Let me know if you need me to sniff ammonia next time. At evening meal later that rotation, Ferris carried only a bowl of plain noodles and a protein block. No peppers, no sauces, no challenges. He slid into his usual seat and stirred the noodles absent-mindedly. Have you retired from your fire rituals? Asked a student shaped like a walking bouquet of coral. I'm taking a break. I think my stomach lining deserves a vacation. Halleck sat down across from him, no tray in hand. Your test results were circulated among faculty. There is now serious discussion about whether your species' pain modulation might be adaptive for interstellar survival. I'm not immune to pain, Ferris said, mouth full. I just know what kind of pain I can manage. That's the part they find alarming. Piv arrived, balancing a tray with small cubes of gel. There is a rumor that your kind also subjects itself to immersion in ice as a leisure activity. Ice baths. Yeah. Athletes do it all the time. You willingly reduce your core temperature? Temporarily. It helps with recovery. And yeah, it sucks. Piv's gills fluttered. Your culture appears to condition itself through suffering. More like, we build tolerance. It's not about enjoying it. It's about what it gives you after. Halleck narrowed his eyes. That is a dangerously flexible philosophy. Maybe, Ferris said. But it works. The next day, Ferris received an invitation to accompany a team of researchers on a simulated environmental stress test. The goal, observe human response to rapid humidity change and atmospheric irritants. He agreed on the condition that he could bring a thermos of tea and his headphones. The chamber they used was a sealed dome outfitted with variable climate controls. Ferris stood on a graded platform wearing shorts, a tank top, and a monitoring patch on his neck. The air started dry, then shifted sharply to 90% humidity. Within minutes, condensation covered every surface. Any discomfort? Asked a voice through the intercom. I feel like a wet sponge in a sauna, but I'm good. The humidity dropped suddenly. Then came a blast of chilled air. Ferris shivered and bounced on the balls of his feet. Okay. Yeah. That's a little rude. The walls began emitting trace amounts of sulfur dioxide, harmless at low levels but enough to sting the nose. Ferris wrinkled his face and squinted. Smells like a broken battery in a swamp. Please rate your discomfort on a scale from 1 to 10. 6. Maybe a 7 if this keeps up. 10 minutes later, the air stabilized. Ferris stepped out, damp and blinking. That was awful, he said, accepting a towel. And yet you endured it without panic. Well, I've been in New York in August. This was just more symmetrical. Dr. Velen appeared again, holding a data pad. We are considering integrating your species' sensory resilience into our diplomatic training modules. May we request your assistance in developing those materials? Only if I get royalties? Royalties? Compensation. Payment. We assumed you were volunteering. Yeah, I do that too. But if you're building a curriculum off my sweat, I want something in return. Halleck emerged from a side corridor, expression unreadable. You have leveraged your suffering into influence. Welcome to humanity, Ferris said, stretching his arms. 2 rotations later, he stood in front of a class of mixed-species cadets, clicking through a slideshow titled Cognitive Framing and Physical Discomfort. A Human Perspective. He gestured to a chart showing pain receptor activation over time. The trick isn't avoiding pain. It's deciding what it means. If I stub my toe, that's just a curse and a limp. But if I run a marathon and my legs hurt, that pain feels like progress. A student with feathers instead of skin raised a hand. Is this why your people engage in combat sports voluntarily? Partly. It's not about violence. It's about control, challenge, and expression. Another student asked, do you believe suffering is necessary for growth? Ferris paused. Not always. But sometimes it's the only way we know we're still trying. After class, he walked out into the courtyard, the artificial dusk casting long shadows across the grass. Halleck caught up to him, holding a small package. This arrived for you. From Earth. Ferris opened the box. Inside, a new bag of dried peppers, labeled Death Spiral. He looked at the label, then at Halleck. You want to try one? Ferris asked. Halleck hesitated. Only under supervision. Ferris grinned. You're learning. The lecture hall's air was a dry, recirculated blend of chemical neutrality and faint ozone, the kind that dulled the senses just enough to make everything feel theoretical. Ferris stood near the center console, arms crossed, watching a student with 3 rotating mandibles attempt to adjust a headset designed for human ears. The headset clattered to the ground for the 3rd time. You could just hold it, Ferris said, or balance it on your cranial ridge. Might be easier. I am attempting to replicate the full human sensory alignment, the student replied, lifting the device again. Your auditory processing is unusually focused. I want verisimilitude. Sure, but if it keeps slipping mid-track, you're not going to get much insight except how annoying earbuds are. Across the room, a group of cadets huddled around a screen displaying a video of a professional chili eating contest from Earth. The sound was off, but the expressions alone, sweat, gasps, open-mouthed panting, elicited various murmurs of disbelief and occasional recoils. Ferris tapped the console to pause the video. Okay, look, I know that footage makes it seem like we're all running a fever and loving it, but that's not how daily life goes. Nobody's doing this during budget meetings. Then why perform it at all? Asked a cadet whose skin looked like polished gravel. Your species appears to chase extremes without a survival imperative. We do a lot of things that aren't strictly necessary. Art, sports, spicy food. It's not always about logic. Then what is it about? Ferris hesitated. Sometimes it's about control. You take something that feels chaotic heat, pain, discomfort, and you choose to face it. That choice matters. Even when it's irrational? Especially then. The students scribbled notes or tapped at their translation devices. A few stared as if trying to decide whether Ferris was enlightened or fundamentally broken. After the session ended, Ferris headed toward the courtyard to get some air. The Institute's artificial sun was cycling into late afternoon hue, casting a golden tint over the ground cover and vines. He sat on a bench near the reflecting pool, letting the quiet settle around him. Piv approached, holding a small container with a label written in blocky, imprecise Earth script. I synthesized a compound based on your earlier descriptions, Piv said. It is not derived from capsicum, but mimics the oral sensation using safe neural stimulants. Would you test it? Ferris eyed the container warily. You cooked up fake pain in a bottle? I modeled it on your description of pleasant suffering. I was curious whether the effect could be culturally or chemically transferable. Is this approved by anyone? No. It is not toxic. I checked. That's reassuring. He opened the lid and sniffed. The scent was oddly familiar, sharp, almost peppery, but undercut by something metallic, like the smell of a battery compartment. I'll try a small dose, he said, dipping the edge of a cracker into the paste. He placed it on his tongue and waited. At first, nothing. Then a slow building warmth, followed by a tingling that bloomed across his palate and moved upward behind his eyes. He coughed. Well, he rasped, you nailed the sensory confusion. That's impressive. Is it pleasurable? Not exactly, he said, blinking. But it's compelling. Like I want to do it again, just to figure out what's happening. Piv's gills fluttered slightly. That is consistent with addictive response profiles. Yeah, but so is jogging. Doesn't mean it's bad. Piv sat beside him. Your people seem to view discomfort as a form of clarity. Sometimes it's the only thing that cuts through the noise. Halleck joined them a few minutes later, his expression unreadable. I have reviewed the data from your latest trial. Your heart rate increased by 13%. Your tear ducts activated. Your digestive system began producing additional mucus. Thanks for the update. You were under controlled duress, yet you described the experience as compelling. That is clinically inconsistent. Ferris leaned back. You ever watch a thunderstorm just to feel small? No, my point exactly. Halleck sat, his posture stiff. I have been reviewing human case studies. Your kind survives extremes that would incapacitate others. Not because of biology, but because of willing exposure. This is deeply incompatible with most known models of intelligent risk aversion. Maybe you're working off the wrong models. Halleck looked at the container in Ferris's hand. You willingly ingested an unverified compound from an alien student. Yeah, because I trust Piv. And because I've eaten gas station sushi at midnight in Kansas. This was safer. That is not comforting. I'm not here to comfort you. Later that evening, Ferris went through the standard health check required after any foreign compound ingestion. The med tech, a soft-spoken avian named Toril, scanned his vitals and frowned. Your blood pressure is slightly elevated. Salivary glands still overactive. No damage, but I advise hydration. Noted. Did you experience any hallucinations? Nope. Just a weird tingle and a sense of being extremely awake. Would you ingest the compound again? Probably. Toril blinked slowly. Your people are hard to categorize. Ferris grinned. We get that a lot. The following day, the Intercultural Behavior Board requested a final debrief. Ferris arrived on time, for once wearing the only clean shirt he had left and sipping from a bottle of some chalky recovery drink. Valu addressed him first. We have completed our review of all sessions involving your participation. The data is comprehensive. However, your rationale remains elusive. I don't think it's something you can graph. It's not about metrics. Then what is it about? Ferris leaned forward. It's about choosing discomfort when you don't have to. About proving to yourself that you're not fragile even when the world tells you to be. Halleck interjected. But why prove it through pain? Because pain is honest. You can't fake it. You can't cheat it. If you're still standing after, then you know you earned it. There was a long silence. Piv turned to the board. I believe we have misinterpreted the behavior as masochistic. It may be existential. Vala's form shimmered slightly. This reframing suggests a cultural emphasis on self-determined resilience. It's not universal, Ferris added. Some people avoid discomfort altogether. But those who face it willingly, they shape how the rest of us survive. The committee exchanged glances, then nodded in unison. You are hereby marked as a cultural resilience exemplar, Vala said. We will adapt the training modules accordingly. Ferris raised an eyebrow. Do I get a plaque or something? No. But your name will be listed in the archive. Cool. I'll take that. On his way out, Halleck caught up with him again. You continue to confuse me. That's just part of the charm. I still do not understand why you persist in these experiments. Ferris stopped walking. Because every time I do, someone like you asks me why. And that means we're both learning something. Halleck considered that. Then perhaps your suffering has value after all. Ferris grinned. Told you. He turned and walked away, the artificial sun dipping below the simulated horizon. Behind him, the campus lights flickered on, casting long shadows across the courtyard stones. The air smelled faintly of dry leaves and ozone, again a reminder that even in a place built by consensus, discomfort still carved out space for meaning. And sometimes all it took to prove you belonged in the galaxy was a pepper, a question, and the willingness to sweat in front of strangers.